So what we're talking today about is job descriptions. So first, I'm just going to discuss what job descriptions are and technically how to build them and use them in TouchStone. And then we're going to spend some time talking about how to manage your business and your employees with the job descriptions. So how to use them for training, for management. They are one of the most important management tools, at least in my opinion. And I'm going to kind of talk about why and how you can achieve better management if you use your job descriptions in TouchStone. So this is the organization chart. And all I did was click on this tab, which is over to the left here. We did have a new release last week, so the organization chart looks a little different than it did before, hopefully better to you. All of the functionality for building the organization chart lies in these three little edit pencils, which are inside of every box. So with these three little edit pencils, I can edit the title of this position, I can add a new position underneath this one, or I can remove the position. You can also drag boxes around the chart, just reordering them. So you just hold your mouse click down and then drag. Okay. If you want to learn more about the organization chart, the technical training last week was specifically on the organization chart, and that's always posted to our resource center. So to access a job description, you simply select a box from the chart, and then it will take you to the job description for that position. So all I did was click on that box, and then it opens the job description for that position. When your job descriptions are built, this is what it's going to look like. You'll have processes like these listed in this position, which creates the job description. So the job descriptions in TouchStone are a list of the processes that this position, bookkeeper, is responsible for. So that's all the job description is. It's a comprehensive list of everything that the bookkeeper is accountable for doing. And then when the processes are documented, it's the how-tos of all of this. So inside of accounts payable, there's documentation on how to pay bills, receivable, how to collect money, how to create a budget, how to do cash flow planning. So each of these are titles, and then when they're selected, it will take you to this screen where you eventually will have a comprehensive list of how accounts payable is done with a step-by-step for all of that. When your job descriptions are not done, then they appear with no processes on them. So I'm going to add a position here. I'm going to go add, and then when I select that position, it'll take me to the job description for this position I just added. So if you have not yet built your job descriptions, this is what they look like. The first thing you'll want to do is title the position, and you can do that just by clicking this little pencil here and erase where it says Untitled and put in the name of your position. If you've built, and spell it right, if you've built your job description or your organization chart already, then you're not going to need to be titling positions because it will already be here. Underneath the title of the position, there's this box, which is for the, or field, which is for the objective of the position. So you just, same thing, click this little edit pencil and this opens. This is the purpose of the position. The objective. It's usually a sentence or a phrase that defines what the position is. This holds spacing, so you can create a list if you want to. So what I mean is, I've seen people put in like the top 3 objectives of the position. So you do like a number 1, get sales. And then it could be number 2, manage. So this is I don't see this so much anymore, but this is a really common thing to do a couple years ago where I can't remember who wrote the book, but there was this idea that if a person, a position, or an employee could only have 3 key things that they were accountable for, not work they were accountable for, but results. So 3 key results. So convert sales, manage employees. So if you like that approach, this will hold the formatting. So when I hit save right there, this is got, this list or bullet pointed list. What's more common, or what I see more often in TouchStone, is a sentence or a phrase. So let me show you a few examples of that. Let's go here. Create marketing strategies and objectives and manage the sales department. So that's the objective for the manager of marketing and sales. So simple, clear, direct position, objective sentences or phrases. I think this one's a little bit longer, yeah. So this says, report on the company's financial status, manage human resources and employees in the support of the entire company. And then in this example, we have here education and experience requirements right here and skills right here. So the job descriptions in TouchStone don't generally have these 2 elements to them. This is more for recruiting and hiring. So what I like to do is make a process and call it education and skills for the manager of admin and finance, and then put this into a form inside of that process and then link that to the job description. If you're one of those people who really likes to see this on the job description itself all the time, then you could put it in the objective field like this if you so choose. So let's go back here to my position. So that's the title and the objective field. The 2 sections of the job description are called strategic processes and then tactical processes. So these are the 2 areas of the job description, or categories within the job description. Very simple. Strategic is for managerial work, strategy work, higher level work, developing things, reporting, creating. So this type of work is generally done by a manager. So it would be common that if this was a managerial position, there would be a lot of strategic processes and less tactical. Tactical is the technical work, the staff work. So for a non-managerial position, it would be very common to have very little or no strategic processes, and they would be all tactical. So let's go back to an example here. So this is a managerial position right here. So there's going to be a lot of managerial work. Sales department training, coaching and training, written warnings, weekly meetings. So all managerial work. And then let's go to a tactical position right here. This position doesn't manage anyone else. So it's got all tactical processes mostly. And then there's this one strategic process. This is a library process, by the way, so you could go to Guiding the Business and pull this down from the library if you like it. It's basically a process that says, we don't want you just to do your work. We want you to provide feedback and input on how the processes and the results of the department could be better. And there's a form in here. So this is a good strategic process for non-managerial positions who have all tactical processes. Let's go back here and then back to this position. So strategic and tactical. If you forget the definitions that as I just gave them, if you go to the Resource Center up here, there's a glossary of terms which defines it pretty clearly for you. So once the job description is been added, or the box has been added to the org chart and you've selected it, the next step is to link the processes to it. So there's 2 ways to do that. One is to use this toolbar item that says Add Existing Process. So this is called existing because these would give you the ability to add processes from the 4 key functions list. So processes that already exist over here, that you've added over here, you can then link using this toolbar item. The second way to build the job description is to add the processes directly to the job description. So that would be an example of when they don't exist on the 4 key functions. So nobody's put them in there yet. And you want to go just right to this job description and start adding processes. You'd use this toolbar item. So let's talk about this one first. So add existing process, when I select it, what's happening is I'm now looking over at the 4 key functions. So the first question is, do you want this in the strategic or the tactical section of the job description? So you choose that. And then you hit the sub-function drop-down. So now I'm seeing all my sub-functions from the 4 key functions list. So this is doing, running, guiding, getting, and then these are my sub-functions. So basically I'm looking for the processes, or I'm going to go to the sub-function where the processes live that are the accountability of this position. So you want to think about, is this a sales position? Is it in the sales and marketing department? Is it an operational position? Is it a finance admin position? Is it a manager? So most of the time, if this was a finance position, say, I would go to running the business, and I'd probably go to the finance sub-function. And now I'm seeing all the processes that are in this sub-function. I scroll down here, I see them from top to bottom. So then I would just select the processes that this position is accountable for. This one's kind of not in the right place, sales follow-up, but irregardless. So then I'd go down and I'd hit save. So you're selecting the positions or the processes that this position's responsible for or accountable for. And then when you select them and hit save, these processes are now linked to this position. If there were more processes that I wanted to add, I'd just go right back here to add existing process, strategic or tactical. That's just the section you wanted it on the job description. Hit the sub-function drop-down, go to another sub-function where the processes are that I want to add, select them just like I did before, and then hit save again. And now those processes are added. So you're just going to methodically go through and choose processes that each position is responsible for. If there are 2 positions on the org chart and they're both responsible for a process, like they both do cash flow planning or they both do sales follow-up, then this process is linked to both positions. So that's something to remember. It's common that if there's a process, well, maybe it's not common, but it happens where there's a process that is the accountability of more than one person. And so then you just link that process to all of those positions. For example, managerial processes. So all of these people here, this whole hierarchy, is responsible for managing. So a process like performance review or writing verbal and written warnings or coaching and training, that would be the accountability of all of these people. And therefore that process would be linked to all of their positions. Let's go back here. So one thing I want to show everyone a change that happened in the new release, which is related to what we're talking about right now. So if I go add existing process for this job description, and I go back to this finance sub-function, these processes behind me here in gray, financial statements, collections, cash flow planning, I don't see those here anymore. And it's because they've already been added to this job description. So I had a user message the Help Center about this a couple days ago, and when they went here, they said to themselves, well, where are those processes? I can't find them. Where's the collections process? I want to add it. It's not there. I can't see it. It disappeared. Nothing ever disappears, but it feels like it disappeared. The truth is it's on this job description already, so you can't add it again because then you'd have a duplicate process. So if that happens to you, look at the job description and make sure that process isn't on it already. So that's add existing process. If you want to add a new process to this job description, so let's say we built this job description by linking from the 4 functions, and then you're looking at it and you're thinking, oh, there's a process missing. And that happens. When you're looking at it from the job description view, sometimes you think about work that this position does that you didn't remember before. So if that happens, you go add existing or add new process. Then you're going to put in the process name right here. Again, you're going to say strategic or tactical section of the job description. And then here, you have to choose the subfunction that this new process belongs in. So even though we're adding this process directly to this job description, TouchStone's still making you keep the 4 functions up to date. So it's always a master list of every process you have in TouchStone. So if we add it here, we have to add it there. So you would go to the subfunction that's related to this process that you're about to add, and then you just hit save. Now, this is an error saying this process name already exists. So this is just the duplicate error. So it just means I have a process in here already that is called process name. So then I just edited the title and changed it, and then there's this process. When you add the new process, I think a really good thing to do is to go to that process and then define it right away here in the objective. So put in the purpose of the process. What is the objective of it in a sentence or a phrase? And why this is important is sometimes you'll add processes on one day and then you go back the next day or someone else is looking at it and you're thinking, what did I mean by that? So defining it right away is a really good idea. It also helps when you go to document it because the objective often shows the scope of the process. So it shows where it starts and where it ends. And sometimes when we're documenting, we don't know where to stop with that particular process we're on. We just keep going on the workflow. So if you can decide the scope of the process before you start to document it, then that really helps you know where to begin and where to end with it. This says complete all purchase orders and research vendors and best prices. So this is the purchase order process from beginning to end and also including researching vendors and getting the best price. So on the job description page, this is all drag and drop too, so I can pull these processes up and down to adjust the order. I can also pull from the strategic to the tactical section. So if you accidentally put things in the wrong place, it's just drag and drop to reorder them. When I've added processes, if I look at them and decide I added it wrong or it wasn't supposed to be that way, or that process wasn't supposed to be on this job description, when I'm hovering over these titles, you'll see these little remove buttons here to the left, or to the right, sorry. So I just hit remove, and then it says, are you sure? And I say, okay. And then that removes the process. Now that process isn't gone from TouchStone. It's not deleted from TouchStone. It's actually still on the 4 functions list wherever you put it. It's just removed it from this job description. One more quick tip for adding processes to job descriptions. If you click the process itself, either from the 4 functions list here, this always tells us where this process is on the 4 functions. It's in running the business, finance, subfunction. When I'm on the process page, if I go here where it says link to job description, I'm now going to see all the job descriptions that this process has been linked to, first of all. So right here, they're in orange. And from this screen, I can link it and unlink it from a position. So if I want to link it to salesperson, I hit that position title and choose strategic or tactical section of the job description, and then I hit link. So now it's on the salesperson's job description, this collections process. If I want to unlink it, I just unlink it or click it, and now it's just taken off with one click. And you know because it's now in gray again. So the quickest way to build the job descriptions, if you haven't done that yet, is to do it from the job description page, like we were just doing, add existing or add new. But once you've built all the job descriptions, if you're adding processes to your 4 functions, processes you forgot or processes you want to add as you go forward, then this is a quick way to do it. Because I don't have to go to that job description, go add existing process, find it on the 4 functions and hit save or add. All I do is go to the process itself, I hit link to job description, and I just with one click I add it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this job description. The last thing in terms of functionality for the job description that I'm going to show you is this button here. This is print send. Everything in TouchStone will print either directly to your printer, or you can export it to Word, or you can export it to a PDF. Or on the job description page, you can print the operating manual for the position, or you can export it to Word. So this print button is just going to open your local printer settings, and then you'll see the job description. This is probably the ugliest way of printing it, but you can certainly do it this way. Everything, once you click print and you open your local printer settings like here, everything related to how this is printing is in my printer. It doesn't have anything to do with TouchStone. So if I want to change the letter size or get rid of the web addresses, I have to do it all inside of my own printer, and you'll have to do the same thing. So it doesn't have anything to do with TouchStone. It's related to your printer. This is probably the cleanest way to print a PDF. So the PDF version, I think, kind of has more of a polished look and feel to it. So it prints like this with the columns and headers. The only downside of printing to the PDF is you can't do your own page breaks. So if you go here, print and export it to Word, and then save it as a PDF, then you can create page breaks. So you'll notice like here, this is not breaking from strategic to tactical. It's just rolling on to the next page. The print operating manual, the best way to do this is to export it to Word and then create your page breaks for it and then save it as a PDF. You can do it directly to your printer, but it's going to do the same thing as I just showed you. It's going to not page break in the right place. So what the print operating manual will do is it will print the job description for the position you're on, which is like a table of contents for the operating manual for this position. And then it's going to print every tool inside of every process. So it'll start with collections, and it'll print the work plans, the checklists, the scripts, all of that. It does not print uploaded files. So let me just show you that. These are uploaded files that are in this process. The print operating manual can't print these uploaded files because these are in different file formats, like they're Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and it can't launch those software programs and then print those and then insert them into that Word document. Obviously, videos are not going to print either, or audios, and I don't think I need to explain why. But everything else will print. So we have extensive printing options and export options inside of TouchStone because we never want anyone to feel like they can't get their stuff out. This is your proprietary information. If you ever decide you don't want to use TouchStone, we want you to be able to take it with you in a writable format. Having said that, TouchStone's one of its main purposes is that everything inside of it is up to date at all times. Like this is everything you're seeing here is the most current version of everything you should have in your business related to process and procedure. Everything in here is up to date. There's no multiple copies of things. There's nobody can do a save as and then put 5 copies of the collections process in different file folders all over your network. Like that's SOP chaos, and TouchStone eliminates that for you. But if you start exporting things, you start printing, you start downloading, and then you download a process, and then you email it to somebody and you say, hey, edit this, and then they email it back. Now you've got 3 versions of that process in a sense, and they're all save as on your computer again. And hopefully somebody takes that most current version and goes back into TouchStone and edits it and updates it. So TouchStone is an opportunity for you to go paperless, for you to attempt in your business to print as little things as possible. It's more efficient, it's better for the environment, and it doesn't create duplicates for you and confusion on where the most current version of everything is. So if you want someone to look at the collections process, say, or let's say I built this job description and I want my manager to look at it and say, yeah, it looks good. All you do is go up and copy this URL up here. Just go right, click copy, and then paste that into an email and say, hey, go look at this job description. It's finished. Tell me what you think. Then that person receives the email. They log into TouchStone. They click the link, and it takes them right to what I'm talking about. So that's an example of how you can move from printing things or exporting and emailing and move more towards this utilization of TouchStone and a paperless environment. The same could be done on a process. Like if we go to this collections process, and let's say I built this script on how to call people when they owe us money, and I want my manager to look at it. I just go right up here, copy the URL, paste it into a document, and then they click it and it opens and they know right what I'm talking about. You can use this export tool right here. I wish we would get away from this email thing. I don't like it at all for this reason, because this is going to email a copy of this script to whoever I decide to email it to, which is creating another version of it. It's far better to copy the URL. Okay, I'll get off that soapbox now. So that's the print send. So let's now talk about how to use job descriptions, because that's the most important thing. Everything in TouchStone needs to be used. People need to follow it. Your employees need to follow it. They need to be trained with it. They need to be course corrected with it. If you don't use what you've documented, then it's just a bunch of great information sitting out there on the internet. And slowly over time, it's going to erode. I mean, it's going to change. And if no one's updating it or using it, then in about 6 months, it's all going to be, hopefully not all, but a lot of it's going to be out of date. So the importance of using the processes is very is really relevant in this situation, because these documents are alive, and if they're not being updated and used, then you're going to lose them, and it's going to take, you're going to have built them and spent a lot of time doing it, and you're going to lose the value of them. So one key way that processes are used is through managers. So this manager's accountability here is to make sure that all these positions below are doing their work, are getting results, positive results. And a smart manager will do that through processes. So rather than saying to the salesperson, your sales follow-up isn't good, why isn't your conversion rate higher? This manager says to the salesperson, here's the sales follow-up process. I'm going to train you in it, and then you're going to follow it. Or rather than the manager saying to the salesperson, okay, you're here, go out and make sales, the manager is saying to the salesperson, here's the sales process. Let's go over it, study it, memorize it. Let me hear you do it. So the manager is managing their employees, getting results through the use of processes. It's really a shift for managers who aren't used to this, but it's such a relief and it's so valuable, because I don't have to scream and yell at people anymore, or get irritated when one person is doing something and the other isn't, or get annoyed when somebody's not doing it like I would do it. They have more control. It can say, these are your accountabilities, this is how you do that, do it. And when there's a problem, they can go back to the process and course correct with the process, as opposed to just talking. So with this in mind, job descriptions become the primary tool for a manager to be able to manage this way. If I hire a bookkeeper and I've got a job description like this one, this is like a comprehensive list of everything that this person does and how they do it. Then I've gone through the effort of documenting all of these processes. Then I've got training, and I have tools, and I have structure to manage this employee with. So the job descriptions can be used for training, number one, and we'll go through some examples of that. And then ongoing management. So new employee training and then ongoing management. So those are the two key things. If I hire a new bookkeeper, I can use this to train that person. If I have an established bookkeeper, I can use this to manage that person. So let's talk about the new employee training idea first. Here on the dashboard, if you've set up control panels and you have management review, which is all done here through account administration, then this is where you can go to do new employee training. So if I have Mary here, who's a new bookkeeper, let's say we just hired her, I can go as her manager, I can go here through management review, and I can create and structure her training. So someone's asking how this box appears. So I'm just going to answer that real quick, because if other people have that question, it's probably important to know. So if you go to the upper right here to this wheel icon, and you go to user accounts, this is where you set up employees. So you add them as users right here with this toolbar item. You can make them users, which are these little blue dots, or they could be administrators. The difference is they have access to everything if they're administrators, and they can do everything, as opposed to being a user who you can restrict access for. So I'm right here, and if I go to control panel, we're logged in as me. I go to control panel right here. You can see I have a control panel for this position, and that's why it appears on my dashboard. Because it's a managerial control panel, I then have management review for these 3 people underneath me. When somebody has been given a control panel for bookkeeper, say, that's why I would see that person in management review. So Mary here has been given a control panel for bookkeeper right here. And that's why we see her in management review underneath me on the dashboard. So if we go back to the dashboard, I have this control panel because it was assigned to me. And then I see these 3 or 4 people in management review because they all have control panels for these positions that are underneath me on the org chart. So Mary here, she's brand new, and I'm gonna, before she even arrives for her first day, I'm gonna structure her training. I'm gonna decide what her training is gonna be. So if I go here to her inside of management review, I see all the processes that she's accountable for. This is the job description. All of these processes came from the job description. So anything I put on that bookkeeper job description on the org chart, like we built those job descriptions a few minutes ago, anything I add from the 4 functions or add directly, put on that job description, will appear here in the control panel for this position. So in the control panel, you can organize the processes differently. It's not just strategic and tactical. You can create your own work groups and organize the processes in any way that you want. So if I'm thinking about how I'm going to train Mary, I'd probably create a group, and I can, oh, this is already done. I can call this week 1. So I just clicked that create group, and then I made this group down here called week 1. So for some positions, you want to, or first of all, you want to think about the length of time it's going to take to train this person. If you've never done this before, then guesstimate it. It's better than not doing it at all. Just kind of think to yourself, here are all these processes. She needs to learn. How long is it going to take to teach her all of these? If you do this multiple times, you get better and better at it. It could be weeks. It could be months. So let's just do weeks, for example. Let's do 4 weeks. Week 2. So I'm creating 4 weeks, week 1, week 2, great group. Let's do week 3, and then week 4. You could do 6 weeks, you could do 6 months. It just depends, again, on how long it could take this person or should take this person to learn these processes. So here's my 4 weeks. Then I would just organize the processes into the weeks. So here's where you want to think, how long should it take a reasonable person, a qualified person, someone who has the minimum qualifications for this position, how long should it take them to learn each of these processes? Think about the process itself. How complicated is it? Does it rely on somebody's experience or education? If it relies on their experience or education, then the training is typically faster. If they don't have experience or education. It's a very technical entry-level position. It may take longer for them to learn things because you have to teach them. So think of all the ins and outs of the training, and then organize the training into weeks. Go as far as thinking, okay, this is the first week. It'll take 1 day to teach this, or 4 hours to teach this, 2 days to teach this, 3 days to teach this. Have it add up to a week, and then go to the second week. Again, if you haven't done this for this position before and you don't have experience in training this way, guess. Try. It's better to guess than to not do it at all. Even if you haven't documented all of these processes yet, I think this is still worthwhile to do for new employee training. Think about if the accounts payable process has not been documented yet, and the way that you've trained people in the past is just saying, hey, Mary, come and watch me do it, watch her do it, take notes, practice, let me watch you. It's the tribal method of training, we call it. If you've done it that way, then use this as an opportunity to do it differently. So rather than having Mary take notes while someone else is doing it, have her take notes in TouchStone, have her build the work plans, have her build the process while she's learning it, have the manager build it with that person as she's learning it. So once these are organized into weeks, this is her training. So on day 1, I go through this with her and I say, this is what you're going to learn in the first week. You're going to go into TouchStone, you're going to study the work plans, you're going to watch the videos, you're going to practice that process. And then when you're fully trained, we'll move on to the next process. So when Mary, I'm just going to log in as Mary right here just so you can see what it looks like. I think this is her. So I would log in with her as her manager, and I'd say, this is your control panel. So now we're logged in as Mary. She would go to her control panel. She would see the weeks as I've organized them. And I would say to her, okay, this is the first thing that we're going to focus on. I'm going to teach you about department company innovation. Here's the input guidelines. Go to that. So Mary would go here. She would read all this. Some of this is just about reading. If she has questions, she can put them here for me in the notes field. And I can review those and answer them. If she's finished with it, she can say done or whatever you decide to have her put in the save as. So she did that. Great. She's finished with it. She then goes to the next process later in the week, accounts payable. She looks at these work plans. She goes through the checks deposits. She watches someone else do it maybe. She memorizes the steps. She practices it. And then she does the same thing. Done. I get it. This was finished. So Mary goes through and makes these notes, studied it, done, watched that video, read that policy, all the way through every process, laid out as I've organized it as her manager. So now we're going to log back in as me here. So once I can run a report right here, and I can say at the end of the day even, I wonder what Mary accomplished today. So through this report tool, I can go and say, what is today? The 24th. Let's do the 23rd. Then I can figure out, what she actually did today, and then I can see it. Done, done. If there was a note to me, she had to look at this, I could go in here and look at it. So once I've looked at what she's done and I'm happy with her training of that particular process, I just go back here to her in management review. I go to the process she said she's done with. I flip these flags that say trained. So she's done that today, and then we go on to the next thing. And ultimately, she has these tick boxes next to everything as she goes through the training. So this is new employee training in TouchStone. The process itself is the training. The work plans, the videos, the scripts. You can build tests in the custom form tool if you want to. But this is the training. She sits in front of the dashboard and she goes through these things. With some processes, she may have to watch someone else do it. I may want to give a lecture to her on it. I want to do practices with her. So you could build all that into the process or that expectation, but the documentation itself is the training. Another key thing you're going to do, and I'm going to move on to the next section here first, but let me just say this. Another thing that you can do if you train this way is if I put a time, this is week 1, 2, 3, 4, and I say to myself, a competent person should be able to learn all these processes in a month. Then I take the time that she spends, the 40 hours for this week, and then I add my management time, so the time that it took me to work with her and anyone else, and I add up all that time, and I times it by my salary and her hourly wage or her salary, I suddenly know what it costs me to hire a bookkeeper. That's not a little thing. If you could say for every position on your org chart, it's going to cost me $20,000 to hire an apprentice technician and train them up to be a senior technician. It's going to cost me $5,000 to hire a bookkeeper because it takes me a month to train her. Suddenly you're in this power position to scale your business. Because if I know it's going to cost 10 grand, say, to hire someone from here to here, and I've got a step-by-step training designed by weeks with expectations and management, then I know what sales need to be in order for me to hire 5 new apprentice technicians. So it's a powerful thing to know. Another thing it gives you is oftentimes we are stuck with bad employees because we're afraid to let them go, because then suddenly we have to do all that work ourselves, and it's so hard to find good people. We've all said this to ourselves. If I know I can hire a good bookkeeper in 4 weeks and it's going to cost me $5,000, I'm more likely to get rid of this person that's not working for me and hire a new person because I feel like I have control over it. Okay, so now let's talk about ongoing training. So that was new employee training. Let's talk about ongoing training and management using the job description. So there's a process in the library called one-on-one meetings. And I'll go to the dashboard here and show it to you there. I'll show you where it is on the 4 key functions before we end. But this is the manager's job description here. And there's a process right here called one-on-one meetings under management, right here. If I select this, this gives me a work plan on how to do one-on-one meetings. So this is a step-by-step for one-on-one meetings. And then there's a form in here, a custom form, which helps me to create the agenda for the meetings. So one-on-one meetings, it sounds like a simple thing, but it is key for ongoing management using processes. It's super important. These one-on-one meetings can be once a week, they can be once a month, they can be once a quarter. I wouldn't do them less than once a quarter at minimum. In this meeting, this is the time where the manager sits with the employee one-on-one and talks about how they're doing. How is the work going? So they talk about work issues, but then you also talk about how's that person doing? How are you? How was your week? How was your month? What do you think could be better? How did you feel about losing that sale? So the manager is connecting with the employee, which is not a simple thing. It takes effort to connect as a manager. The number one reason that employees quit businesses is because of bad management. And you don't have to take my word for it, just look on the internet. That's the number one reason that employees leave their position is bad management, bad culture, bad direction, everything related to bad managers. So processes help your managers be better. Processes show them the kind of management you want to have in your business. Processes allow them to be good managers, and it creates consistency across the company so that I know as the owner of the company in the sales and marketing department, my employees are being managed in a really great way and in the same way as they are in the operations department. Everyone has the same experience because managers are all using processes. So this one-on-one meeting process is to that end. So this form can be filled out with items to discuss. Like these fields are all live now, so I can literally prepare for this monthly meeting. Goals for next period, personnel issues. So in items to discuss, there should be a process. So a manager could choose from a process from the job description to discuss with the employee. So let's talk about, everyone knows I can't spell, let's talk about sales follow-up this week. So the manager should choose a process to discuss. Now they could choose a process because the employee is having issues with it. They could choose a process because the employee is doing it really well. They could choose a process just because they want to get feedback to see if it needs to be updated or used. So in this meeting, I can sit with the employee and I could say, let's talk about sales follow-up. I noticed that your statistics just aren't that great. I ran a report and you're just not following up 7 times like the process says. So what's going on? What is it about the process? Are you having a hard time following it? Is it not clear? Let's talk about the process. Let's pull it up in TouchStone and just go through it. So you'll notice by my tone, I'm not saying, what's wrong with you? You don't listen to me. You don't do the follow-up. I told you 5 times. You're not as good as everyone else. What's wrong with you? I'm not saying that. I'm saying, what's wrong with the process? Let's look at it together. This process is designed. We all built it together because we know it gets good results for sales follow-up. It has these clear steps. Let's just go over it and figure out where it's going off for you. It's just a much better way to manage because I'm not making it personal. I'm not saying something's wrong with you. I'm saying, what's wrong with the process? Let's look at it together. If the person's doing really well with sales follow-up, I can say, gosh, your numbers are so good. You're doing a great job. Let's look at the sales process together, the sales follow-up process together. Tell me if you're doing anything extra here that's not in the process. So this is a way that managers can take their best employees and say, how can we make the process better? Because you're doing this so well. Let's take the techniques that you're using and let's innovate the process with them, and then let's teach it to everybody else. So this is an example of capturing your intellectual property, what you're paying for while that employee is learning on the job, and putting it into your documentation and allowing everyone to benefit from it. So these are just 2 of the main reasons why you would want to do this one-on-one meeting process. So when I save this, it's going to date and timestamp it right here, and then I can print a copy of it if I want to, or I could go to TouchStone and pull it up right before I'm preparing or ready for this meeting. If the employees know meetings like this are coming up, it really helps for work efficiency as well, because if they come to you with something and you say, let's save that for the meeting, or you are thinking something is top of mind, oh, I have to deal with this with the employee, rather than just going and interrupting them or sending them an email, which is also an interruption, save it for the meeting. Think about the intricacies of communication and the cost of all of that. Decide what can be saved for this 60-minute meeting and won't take 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. When added all up is quadruple, if not 10 times the amount of the time of the actual meeting. So managers can use these techniques to save themselves time and to make their department more efficient. So communicate with this one-on-one meeting process, and it's all about the job description. So it's all about zeroing in on the processes on this job description. So that's one technique for ongoing management using job descriptions. Have one-on-one meetings. You can also implement performance reviews using that same concept. So in the library, which is over here in Guiding the Business, here's where you can find the library, general processes. We're in Guiding the Business. That's where these processes live. Here's all those managerial processes. So there's the one-on-one meeting process, and there's also this performance review process right here, and numerous other really great managerial processes. But so in the performance review process, this guides you in how to set up a performance evaluation form using the job description. So the job description itself becomes the form. So you take work listings from the job description and you give a rating on them. So this is another way that job description can be used as a really effective management tool. Because if I'm on a monthly, quarterly basis sitting down with the bookkeeper here and going through processes and talking about how they're doing related to them, and then at the end of the year I give them a performance review, which is an evaluation of their abilities for all of these processes, well, that's just making it full circle. It's just making sure that they're following their processes and that they're being evaluated on those processes, which leads that employee to truly understand that the processes are important. And that's the key here. Employees need to understand that the documentation is important, that I, as their manager, am paying attention to it all the time and using it and making it relevant, and that they, in the end, need to follow it because they're going to be evaluated on it all the time. If the workflows are not right in accounts receivable, let's make them right because they're going to be evaluated on it. So again, that's just another technique to how to make the job descriptions or the processes relevant. Here's another technique. When the bookkeeper comes to me as their manager and says, God, you know, I just can't find that budget template, or I was creating the financial statement and I somehow got the dates wrong. I think there's some button you press where you go advanced and then you can do it by column. Can you just show me? I don't know. Rather than saying to the bookkeeper, oh, that's easy, you just click here and you go here, let me show you. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, you know, go to TouchStone, go to the financial statement preparation process, and follow the work plan. It's in there. So I'm not answering their question. I'm not being their answer person. I'm not getting interrupted. I'm making them own it. I'm making them accountable for their own work. And it's in TouchStone. And if they go to TouchStone and they go to this financial statement preparation process and there isn't a task for how they go to advanced and create multiple columns for the statements, it's not there, well, then we need to add it because that's an important step. But if you've documented the process thoroughly, it probably is there, and all they need to do is go and remind themselves. Studies have shown in training that if I tell someone something, I have to tell them 10 times before it actually sinks in. If they're in a complicated position, I have to tell them 10 times. If you show them, like they go and read it and study it and follow a step-by-step, it's at most 2 times if they're a competent person. Usually 1 time and they get it, but at most it's 2 times. So think about the time related to that. 10 times I have to tell them, my time, their time, 10 times before they get it, or 2 times. You can see the difference. So make TouchStone the answer person from now on. Now, some of us as managers have lived this way where we like being the answer person. We think it makes us look good, and no one would admit to this, but it has to do with your ego. You run around being, you know, the gold star, and you're like, I know everything about everything, and let me show you, and let me show you, and let me tell you. We're teaching our employees to come to us and say, you know, where is it, mommy? So if that's you, this is a chance to change your management style. And in a process-dependent business, it's critical for managers to change their management style in this fashion. Because if every manager is saying, no, go to TouchStone, no, go look at the process, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to show you again, go look at the process, they only need to say that a certain number of times before employees will stop coming to them, and your entire business will change. It'll turn from a chaotic, let me show you place to a process-dependent business where people are using the processes. Okay, so someone has a question. This is a little off topic, but I think I'll answer it anyway because it's related. So I said kind of off the cuff here when we were talking about training, having to do with Mary right here, I talked about how you could give the employee a test. And that's what this person's asking about. I've totally paraphrased your question, but I'll answer that. So in the process tools page, so let's go, I think I remember an example here. Let's go to doing. On the process tools page, there's a tool called a custom form, customer complaints. So here, this is the custom form tool. So there are work plans, checklists, scripts, uploaded file. There's all different templates that you can use to document your processes with. The custom form it's like Google Forms, and it allows you to build like fields and multiple choice questions, checklists, drop down. So if you so choose, you can build a test in your processes. So I could go here to the custom form, and I could call this the customer complaint. I'm just going to do this because I can't type fast. Test. So now I've got a new custom form right here. So then I could go and build a test. So I choose paragraph, which gives a big field. Short answer gives a small field. And in the test here, I can say, what do you do if? So you ask a question, and then you save it. And then they have to answer that question. Or you can do multiple choice. You can ask a question here, and then you can give answers like A, B, or C. So think about what you want the employee to gain by studying and reading these processes, and then decide what good test questions would be. Now, when they go to take the test, they could look at the work plan and then go back and answer it, which is fine, I think. But because of that, you could ask more open-ended questions, like related to the scripts. If the customer says this, how would you answer it? And they have to say it in their own words. So open-ended questions are good, but you could do multiple choice or checklist boxes and so on. So I'm just going to link this to this job description here, because this is the one I have a control panel for. So then if I go back here to the dashboard, and I go to this position, now I'm going to see this process right here. And when I select it, now if you scroll down to the bottom here, here's the test. So the employee could be required, and you can collapse all this, by the way, if you just want to go to one thing. So the employee would be required to read the work plans, memorize the scripts, go through the forms, go through the files. They're in their own control panel doing all this, and then they go to the custom forms, and they go to the test, and then they'd have to take the test. So they'd answer the questions here, they'd fill in the questions here, and then when they save it, it's going to date and time stamp it, and now the test is done. So at the end of the day, as their manager, I'd go hit a reports, I go to management review, and I'd see the test. Now, it doesn't do any fancy things where it will take a whole department's tests and combine them into something and show you the results, like SurveyMonkey. It's not like that. But for one-on-one employee training, typically we're not training whole teams. A manager's training one person. This is adequate. They go take the test, fill it out, I'd look at it, and decide whether they were fully trained or not. So that's an example of building a test inside of TouchStone. Next week, let me answer this question real quickly. So someone's asking about the color coding here. So let's just go back here. So the color coding has to do with how the status of the documentation of your processes. So because a process is blue, like this one, that means it's got some content in it. So when I click it here, there are tools that have been used. There's content in here, but I haven't decided that the documentation is finished. So when the documentation is finished, like I'm done with it, I can fill this box in right here that says process documentation completed. And then when you look at the process from the 4 functions list, it's going to be black. So when you see this color coding in the dashboard here, like here, this one hasn't been marked as complete. When you see the color coding, that's what it means. If a process is red, it means there's nothing in it yet. It's just a title. If it's black, like these, it means it's complete. And if it's blue, it means there's something in it. Some documentation has been started, but it's not completed yet. Okay, so next week, we're going to start an exciting conversation about process documentation. So we're going to talk about this screen. I'm going to first talk about work plans and checklists. So how to build a work plan, all the the technical things within it related to building work plans and checklists. And then I'm also going to talk about what makes a good work plan. So what does a thoroughly documented, well-done work plan look like, and how to achieve that result? And then also checklists. What does a good checklist look like? How do you use checklists? What is it for? How do you decide if you need one? So if you have employees who are going to be documenting processes, they don't necessarily have to know everything about TouchStone. They don't even have access to the 4 functions list. They don't need to build the org chart or the job descriptions. That should already be done. But what they do need to know is how to document processes and how to update processes. So these 2 next webinars, next week and the week after, are good sessions for employees who are documenting, because I'm going to talk about how it's done poorly and how it's done really well, starting with work plans and checklists, and then the following week we'll finish up the rest of the process tools.